From 2 to 7 is called the pre-operational stage. The two hallmarks of this stage is egocentrism. And we see it comes back in adolescence. Egocentrism, total self-centeredness. Children cannot see out of their own little world. The total focus is on them. An inability to look at another perspective from 2 to 7. And it comes in stages, it grows during that time. If your child, say his name is John, had a brother named Joe, and you say, John, do you have a brother? Say, yeah. What's his name? Joe. And then you'll say, well, does Joe have a brother? We don't know, because he can't see from that other perspective. Egocentrism. Also at this age, it starts to develop, there is what's called a lack of conservation. This has nothing to do with the environment. Conservation means, or lack of, means that if you alter the shape of something, it's still the same something, if that makes any sense. For example, if you were to tell a child, you have a stack of pennies, say 20 pennies, stacked, say horizontally, and then you take the same 20 pennies and you spread them out all over the floor, you say, what amount is more? They're going to say those that are spread, because it represents to them a larger image. You know, and they try to trick us, these bartenders, as adults, by putting that 12-ounce beer in a cylinder, right? Still 12 ounces if it's in a mug or in a cylinder. Object permanence. I'm sorry, conservation. Need some more coffee. Another example is, here, anybody have a child under the age of 6? Try this one. Does he have a brother or sister? No. Bring a friend over. Give him one of those little personal-sized pieces. Cut it into 12 pieces. And give it to his friend, cut into 4 pieces. What do you think he's going to think? That he has more, right? Same pizza. Conservation. 7 to 11. Children start to learn logic and to think concretely. At this point, they can learn conservation and math tasks. And lastly, formal operations, the teen years, adolescence, abstract reasoning, and mature moral reasoning occurs during this stage. A name we associate with moral reasoning is another psychologist by the name of Lawrence Kohlberg, Kohlberg. He also thought that when it came to development, he talked about cognitive moral development. And he devised an experiment called the Heinz dilemma to exemplify how moral reasoning differs throughout the ages. Briefly, if you're a pre-adolescent, it's called the pre-conventional level of moral reasoning. Mid-adolescence, conventional level, and late adolescence, post-conventional. What he did was, he set up an experiment called the Heinz dilemma, where a man needed a medication to save his wife's life. And what happened was, he reasoned with the farmer and said, look, you have to sell me this medication. I can't afford it. I'll make payments. I'll do whatever I want, whatever you want, to save my wife's life. He was intractable, was the pharmacist. He said, no, I'm not selling to you unless you have the full amount. So the man stole the medication. If you're at the pre-adolescent or pre-conventional level, they would say stealing is wrong, black and white thinking. The conventional level starts to see a little bit more, but say, no, still wrong. Still wrong. Looks at more sides. And then you have the post-conventional where they say, hey, look, come on. He was being reasonable. He had to save his wife's life. Of course stealing in this instance is okay. Certain things to look at. Look at, in this chapter, language development. The stages of language. You have babbling, 2 months old. Parents, don't be misled. The children are not saying dada when they babble. They're saying buh-buh. At 12 months, they do say dada. And it's also known as holophrases, or the one-word stage. Where they're saying dada, it really means something. I want daddy. Between 2 and 3 years is something called the two-word stage, also known as telegraphic speech, where 2 words convey a message. Want food. Send money. It's like a telegram. After 3, let's just suffice it to say that the vocabulary increases and increases and increases. 2 names in language development. Noam Chomsky, still alive, believes that language is nature. Left alone in the world, we will learn to develop our own language, called LAD, Language Acquisition Device. And then, we've already talked briefly about him, B.F. Skinner disagrees. He said language comes from imitating our parents and others around us. They're probably both right. Evidence of Skinner? Accents. You're born in the South, you have a Southern accent, right? Like me, South part of Queens, New York. When we talk about social development, we know that children must be exposed to certain influences to develop properly. They must have a constant caregiver from day one, usually the parent. Without that parent, they may become anxious and withdrawn. Look at the Harry Harlow experiments in your book, Harlow. Also, look at your book, Diana Baumrind, Baumrind. She said that there are 3 types of parenting. How do we parent our children? What's the right way? You have the authoritarian, which is rigid rules, harsh discipline. And then you have the opposite, permissive. And there are 2 types of permissive. Permissive indifference, where you don't care, you let your child run around the street all night long. Permissive indifferent, and permissive indulgent, where you see like these parents, they live their lives for their kids, they mortgage their house so their kids can become a skating champ or whatever. Everything for the child. Children like that usually wind up pretty spoiled. And then her preferred style is called authoritative, where rules are not black and white, not etched in stone. There's flexibility there. There's still rules, but there's more flexibility. Mid-range. I don't like this theory because the terms sound too much alike. Authoritarian, again, harsh. Authoritative, that's the preferred style. Permissive, definitely not the preferred style. But take a look at that. Adolescence. We know that adolescence is marked by something called adolescent egocentrism. Remember the terrible twos? It's all about me. It reemerges in adolescence. Me, 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 me. Again. I know some adults said it never stops, okay? Terrell Owens, for example. It's all about me. My beloved stepdaughter used to have a t-shirt that said, the thing about me, it's all about me, okay? In other words, but how is this demonstrated? How is this manifested, this adolescent egocentrism? 2 ways. The imaginary audience. This is where adolescents think that everybody's looking at them. It's almost like paranoia. They have a little zit, right? They think it's like this big. Everybody's looking at them. I remember when I was in middle school, boy, I'd never want to go through back. Remember people, you remember that, don't you? Middle school, why would people get into fight? Because somebody created this grievous sin. He was talking behind your back. When you get to my age, it's like, please talk behind my back, okay? And then there's the other form of adolescent egocentrism called the personal fable. This is the belief that your own feelings are unique, that you're indestructible. That's why we see accidents are the leading cause of death in adolescents, because they'll go speeding at 90